Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our TNSA talk today. We're really excited. David Braswell right now is sharing his screen. So we have David Braswell, Amy Hathaway, and Don Green with WK Dickson, and they're going to talk about the ABCs of green infrastructure. And don't forget, if you have a vague title on your Zoom, notification from what you're signed on to, please just send me a chat or an email to let me know that you were on the call. Because first of all, you will get a PDH certificate, and I email that out afterwards to the folks who attend. And sometimes we have some follow-up information that we send as well. So just send me a quick note if you are on here and I'm not sure of your name. I think Catherine Green, you've already sent me something, so you're good to go. I think that's all we have for now. I have a little bit of updates after we're done, but I'm going to hand it over to WK Dickson. And thanks for the folks who are sending me chats already.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of kick it off. This is ABC's Green Infrastructure, September 9th, 2020. Great year, 2020. From now on, we'll be saying what happened before and after 2020. It'll be a demarcation time because it's so strange. But anyway, here's my shameless self-promotion for WK Dickson. Is I have a little page on our website. I'm your basic everyday stormwater hero. Yes, I am. And next, and here's who we are. I'm on the very far left. I'm senior old. That means I'm old. Been in the water quality business for several years, and stormwater several years. And now I'm retired from the great city of Chattanooga, and working part-time with WK Dickson and doing some other stuff. And so introduce yourself, David.
All right, and I'm David Braswell. I was just noticing Don and I both had 38 years. I think I decided a few years ago that for every year I keep working, I'm going to take a couple of years off my experience, kind of keep it reasonable. But yeah, I'm the stormwater manager for WK Dickson, so I help promote a lot of the stormwater projects, the SCM projects around the Southeast, and very excited to be here with y'all today.
And I'm Amy Hathaway. I'm the relative newbie with only 10 years on my resume. But yeah, happy to be part of the group and to be talking with you guys about green infrastructure today.
All right.
All right.
Well, as you can see, this is our kind of company footprint, just 11 offices across the 4 southeastern states. And I was going to say we cover Dixie like the dew, but you know, that's kind of a stormwater thing. But anyway, we definitely are interested in stormwater across the Southeast and things that impact our states. And there's somebody in the foster grants. And as Don said, we're going to be talking a little bit about the ABCs as well as the DEFs of green infrastructure and kind of what that looks like and means to the stormwater professionals in Tennessee. And you know, as we go through this, I think you kind of see, I think green infrastructure is as much a state of mind in our planning and implementation of projects as it is just the specific elements that go into it. As you see here, I mean, what, especially in my lifetime, is we have seen stormwater evolve, you know, over the 20+ years. A lot of things have really happened. You know, as I was thinking about this, you could almost go back 200 years. You know, back in the original founding, or, you know, in the first 100 years or so of this country, stormwater was basically, you know, it came down and you just got rid of it as quickly as possible. You know, the saying was that dilution was the solution to pollution. And that worked really good. You know, we just put it in the rivers and lakes and estuaries and let nature take care of it. But as more and more people kept coming and as our cities got bigger and problems got greater, all of a sudden, you know, the rivers and the lakes and the estuaries couldn't handle it anymore. Nature was overrun. Not only that, but you know, a number of years ago, back in the 70s, believe it or not, we didn't always have computers. And when we were looking at flood control and providing detention, you know, we were doing that graphically. You know, we actually had to compute inflow and outflow hydrographs and, you know, do it by hand. And people got really good at creating graphs, and you could do a 10-year design for a detention pond just graphically. And then we actually started getting laptop or PCs, you know, that you could put on your desk and not be housed in a warehouse. And all of a sudden we could start doing 2 through 100-year design for detention ponds with a computer. And so we were starting to mimic nature a little bit, at least in the peak runoffs. But, you know, we still had, you know, flooding because of that. I mean, you still weren't really fully mimicking nature or fully controlling storm events, and, you know, development continues. And, you know, in recent years, we've really more evolved into the LID and green infrastructure, which is just another component of that detention process, which allows us to really look more at infiltrating some of that stormwater, providing more water quality for it. And as we go through that, you know, we really do then begin to more closely mimic nature. But more than that, I mean, I think, you know, we can do that from an engineering standpoint, but I think one of the things that LID and green infrastructure help us do is just really improve the quality of life. And I think you'll see that in some of the slides and some of the things that we look at and as we go through the presentation. But it really is more of a quality issue than anything. I'm sorry for that. Let's see. As we start looking to, I mean, green infrastructure is certainly going to be element driven. I mean, there's going to be design components that we look at when we're performing a site evaluation or we're looking in a community. This was a kind of a good project. There used to be an old culvert that ran through town that was undersized. And one of the things that green infrastructure allowed is to put in this regenerative stormwater conveyance, which eliminated 250 feet of a large box culvert over a, you know, a more or less a steep transitional area. It opened that up. You know, it helped control peak flows by providing some storage. You know, it reduces pollutant loads, especially in the low flows. Each of these bays has some infiltration capacity to put some of that water back into the ground. More and more vegetation will take hold here, which promotes some of the denitrification and things. But not only that, but it creates more of a pleasant atmosphere. I mean, a green space that provides the biodiversity, and you know, and when people drive by here, you know, it's just more of an interesting feature for people to see. You know, some of the things that are more common that most people are probably more familiar with are the bioretention ponds. These certainly help provide that infiltration as well as water quality benefits. The one on the left, both of these have been recently constructed. The one on the left, we've had a rain event, and so the water is sitting waiting to be carried down through the filter and either through an under drain and downstream or on into the groundwater system. The one on the right is for a much smaller area. It takes some roof runoff from the building next to it as well as the sidewalks. But before this was put in, this was just a really muddy, not attractive area for the library, and now it's an attraction. It definitely improves the appearance as well as providing that water quality benefit and allowing that water to infiltrate down. Another very popular green infrastructure component is permeable pavement, and here we're showing the permeable pavers. These are a little more expensive, but certainly when you put these in, you allow for infiltration into that stone base below. And the amount of storage that you get is really dependent on how much gravel, the depth of that gravel underneath it, as well as the infiltration. So it's a very flexible tool that you can use in parking lots or downtown settings. You can also go with permeable concrete or permeable asphalt by controlling the aggregate size. And both of those are cheaper, but they're certainly not as attractive as the pavers. So this is a really nice feature for downtown areas, for sidewalks, as well as around parking lots.
We have several of those applications in the city of Chattanooga.
Right. Yeah, I know, you know, several, I mean, city of Atlanta has paved, you know, whole roadways using this and 3 or 4 feet deep of gravel to help control volume. You know, they're, they have a combined sewer, and instead of digging all that up to, you know, switch that out, you know, they found that installing things like this not only improved the neighborhoods, but saved a lot of money in trying to replace combined sewers. So I think
I'm gonna pop in,
right.
and I'm gonna walk us through some of the benefits of green infrastructure. Before I do that, Charlene, can you do our first poll question? Those of you who've been on my talks before know that I like to do little polls. So this is an easy one. Do you feel like your MS4 is supportive of green infrastructure projects? I'm just curious. See what the group says on this one. And then Charlene, once everybody answers, just feel free to pop in and tell us the exciting results. So the benefits of green infrastructure, go ahead and advance us on, David, to the next one. So one of the things that I love about green infrastructure is all the wonderful benefits that come along with it. So, you know, beyond just looking at flooding problems and improving water quality, the thing that I like best about green infrastructure is that it covers so many other aspects of just our community life and how to improve our communities. Oh, there's our results. Hey, that's pretty good.
Yep.
More than half are supportive of green infrastructure projects. So good. Well, hopefully we're not preaching to the choir tonight or today, but just re-emphasizing the good points that green infrastructure has that you can share among your friends and elected officials and spreading the love about green infrastructure. So again, one of the things that I like best is that we've got so many other benefits that couple along with this. Yeah, I think most of you on this call are already pretty aware of the water quality benefits and the biodiversity that green infrastructure brings, as well as, you know, the infiltration, healthy soils aspects, reduced urban heat island effect. Not sure how many of you are really familiar with that. I mean, it kind of seems like this just floating in the sky concept. But I used to do green roof research back in my early days of stormwater work. And one of the benefits with green roofs as a green infrastructure is that they bring that green space to those highly, highly urbanized areas where there is no ground area to install anything green. And one of the things that we looked at was just how quickly you can change the surface of your rooftop air temperature when you add plants to it. And so reducing that urban heat island by adding vegetation really is an actual thing. So I've experienced that. You know, improved air quality is another great benefit just from adding all this vegetation. And then one of the things that I'm gonna expand on a little bit more in the next few slides is green jobs and the increased property values. I think someone should probably mute their phone. Travis. Charlene, can you mute? Okay. So increased property values, this is one of those things that sometimes is hard to quantify, but I went through and looked at some of the numbers for this project in Chattanooga. It's their Anderson Avenue project that was completed a couple years ago, and it's several city blocks right next to each other. And I looked at the home values for the homes that faced that project that was redone. And it was pretty striking to see the increase in just the median house value, looking at those individual properties based on, you know, comparing that with the median values of the surrounding homes in the neighborhood. So oh, sorry, I wasn't ready. Go back.
I'm sorry.
So one of the things, you know, we see these streetscape projects in commercial areas and have seen how they revitalize business districts. And I just think we can see the same translation when we do these projects in residential areas and how they can revitalize those residential areas. And we've seen that in Chattanooga. And I think adding these green infrastructure components instead of missed opportunities that I've seen in other cities is just a great element to weave everything together and just remember to include that, so that when in your municipality, in your city, in your county, when you have streetscape projects in the books or, you know, in the plan ahead, just try to talk with those planners and get that green infrastructure incorporated, because I've seen way too many missed opportunities of just where that wasn't added into the project. And so that was a bummer. But anyway, so moving on, green jobs is another, there we go, is another great way that we can see how green infrastructure has benefited our economy. This is another kind of tricky thing that gets hard to quantify, but luckily someone has done it for us. So this was a study a few years ago, and they looked at, they kind of packaged it together as ecological restoration industry. And that basically includes anybody who's involved in ecological projects. And that's something, anything that goes towards improving just ecosystem health. It's very broad, but that's kind of the best way that they could encompass everyone together and include everyone who's involved in our line of work. Next slide, David. So what they found was they kind of categorized it into direct and indirect impacts. I think most of us on the call are included in the direct impacts. So that's scientists, engineers, planners, contractors, construction firms, nurseries that are growing the vegetation that go on our projects. And so what they found was our industry employs about 126,000 people each year and contributes 9.5 billion to our US economy, which is great. And so then when you look at the indirect impacts, that makes our numbers even stronger. And indirect just includes kind of more of the background support that goes into our project beyond the engineers, contractors, and you know, landscapers. So what you can see on the graphic that was included in that study, it just shows how, you know, folks in our field have even more people employed than our iron and steel industry, coal mining and logging. So I think that's really great to see. Next slide, David.
Even especially green infrastructure requires specialized knowledge for these landscape firms to maintain and away from like a retention pond. So that's even more so going to develop some green jobs for companies that maybe not even exist, you know, now. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and so you're right. And so what I saw in North Carolina was as more and more stormwater regulations came into place and more SCMs were being built. There were more landscaping companies that were transitioning or specializing to, you know, pond maintenance, wetland maintenance. And so that was kind of a specialized field that was growing in North Carolina. So I kind of see that transitioning into our state as our programs evolve. So the next thing I just want to highlight is like the triple bottom line approach for, so environmental justice is kind of a relatively new term, and it really just focuses on encompassing environmental, economic, and social benefits. And when you have those three items converge into the middle of your Venn diagram, you've got that sweet spot of improved quality of life. And so really that just means that where you live should not determine, you know, whether or not you have access to clean water, like clean drinking water or clean waterways. And we'll see Dawn in this little image like pop up a couple times in our talk. I had fun creating that. So next we're going to go through the cost of green infrastructure. This is kind of a tough subject. So the cost in general, green infrastructure can be more affordable than traditional stormwater infrastructure. And really that's when you're going in with the low impact development techniques and you're taking out a lot of those hard structures. When you have less of that hard infrastructure, your construction costs are generally going to be lower. One of the things that a lot of our communities look at is trying to be creative with our funding. So I've got an example I'm going to highlight in a couple of slides later on. Bond referendums is another thing. I remember voting on bond referendums in Raleigh when I lived in North Carolina that was going to fund stormwater projects. I don't think I've seen that here yet in Knox County. But so that's just another avenue that I've seen that has provided funding. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that there's been this discussion of, you know, your upfront costs may be lower, but then your maintenance costs end up, you know, increasing on the back end. And so that's just something to try to figure out and coordinate and where that funding is going to come from. Next slide. So again, it's difficult to find hard numbers that compare traditional development versus low impact development, mainly because nobody wants to design things twice. And so there is a study, it's a few years old, but it highlights a handful of developments in the US and also randomly a handful of developments from New Zealand. I think just two people were buddies and knew each other and decided to do a paper together. But anyway, so in this, the 5 were the US developments that they looked at in the paper. And so really it was kind of for each development, it was a side-by-side study where they looked at traditional development versus designing it for low impact development, where they clustered the homes together, they reduced the site disturbance, they tried to preserve the natural areas, reducing impervious surface, really a lot of the traditional low impact development techniques that we have come to love and use all the time. And so they were able to document through their construction cost estimates that reduction of 43% in their construction costs. So I think that's really powerful and does a great job of illustrating how when you reduce those hard structures, you can reduce your costs. And one of the things that I thought was great from these studies is that for these developments that they looked at, they basically took out these big wet ponds that would take lots, you know, home lots away, those footprints away. And they were able to keep those residential lots. And instead of having wet ponds, they were able to like preserve the forest area. And I view that as a nicer amenity. But anyway, so that was a great study. Next slide, David. So this next example is just a project I wanted to highlight that kind of shows unique private and public partnerships that can bring together a successful project. So this is Booker Creek Basin Park. It is in Chapel Hill in North Carolina. It's actually under construction right now. So it came to be, again, it's just a unique project that shows how various people can come together. So right in the middle of the picture is kind of where the project is located. And this was identified on a watershed study from a few years ago. And this was really just the prime spot of where the town wanted to do a flood storage project. This is located like really close to UNC's campus, or University of Chapel Hill's campus, sorry, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill's campus, where it was just built in a floodplain years ago before there were floodplain regulations, and they just consistently had problems. And so this was their spot of where they wanted to do something to kind of be the most help for the town. Unfortunately, it was all on private property. And so they had to coordinate with these private property owners. And then one of the owners wanted to build an apartment building right next to the project site. So the way they figured out to best streamline the project and help it move along and coordinate all the different elements was really to do them together. So they they basically planned the flood storage project along with the apartment building project. Basically coordinated the planning, the design, the permitting, all the construction coordination, really kind of all together. And that just helped streamline the project and move it along. Another thing they found out was there's a shopping center on the north edge of the property. And I'm fuzzy on the details on this, but they found out that the shopping center had added impervious surface that had pushed it beyond how much it was allowed to have without enough stormwater mitigation. And so they figured out that the shopping center actually needed to add additional treatment. And so they added a wetland. They were able to add a wetland into this project just to help mitigate that additional impervious surface that was coming off of that shopping center property. So it's just kind of like another way to bring everybody together, win-win-win for everybody to accomplish this project. Next slide.
Chattanooga, we had 2 projects that were public-private partnerships.
Good.
And permeable pavers. One was next to the Chattanooga Choo Choo, and one was, ever been to Chattanooga, it was a Flying Squirrel. It was a really good restaurant bar. And in front of both of those, we did a public-private partnership with them we want to pave the area, but we worked with them to do permanent pavers. So
yeah, and I've been over to that one, and that looks fantastic. It was a really good job. Yeah, so this one, here's just a couple pictures of what it looks like before construction. And this is actually another one where it was funded through a bond referendum. So it's just another great example of, getting that public support of how people actually voted on this to, pay for the funds for it. So again, it's the town's first flood storage project. They're doing a great job of weaving together social elements with the project. Go ahead to the next slide, David, I think. Yes. And so they've added in walkways. So for that passive recreation, they've added in an overlook, and that so that they can really kind of bring people into the experience of, through the wetland and the stream habitat. They've got an intensive landscaping plan to kind of try to develop this successive forest over time, along with the improvements to water quality. Next slide. And yeah, so this next one is just a cross section that kind of shows how they're trying to reconnect to the floodplain from where it should naturally be without all the, commercial development that's surrounding it. I think that's it for that one. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it back over to David to walk us through the dual purpose.
Right. Yeah, well, you mentioned a little bit about dual purpose, but that is an important part of green infrastructure that you get. And you can see, we get the stormwater management side, but we also improve our communities. We get the pollutant removal and definitely runoff volume reduction, through the infiltration, which also helps remove the pollutants. We're reducing peak runoff, the flood abatement. Anytime you can infiltrate or store water, you're reducing those downstream impacts. And that's one thing in nature. And if you've got that, even a forest, when you get enough rainfall, it all runs off. But the forest is so important because it traps those first few inches. and helps slow that runoff down. But the increased infiltration, which is important to groundwater as well. But, you know, then you get the quality of life that we've talked about a little bit. You know, the community development side, you know, you create wildlife habitat. Amazing, you know, I see deer and rabbits and all coyotes and all kind of things in my yard. You know, it's just years ago you would never see that, but you know, the wildlife, you know, they will come back when you have places for them. But the green space, you know, it's just, you get rid of some of that pavement and get rid of some of that heat island that you've got. It makes a big difference. Recreation space is another important part when you can work even the low impact development or the green infrastructure in. You can create some really nice green space, some paths for people to walk on. It also creates that educational component, not only through signs, but just people visually seeing some of this. You know, it's a great place for artwork to help promote those items as well. And this is a library project that we were involved with. It basically was an existing site. The county was looking at trying to improve the properties that they control to help reduce runoff, as well as improve water quality. Those were some key components. But they also wanted to create educational opportunities for the patrons, especially at the library. You have a lot of school children coming here on field trips. You know, they wanted to have a little amphitheater, which has the focus of the bioretention pond, so that they could do some presentations to the kids. You know, and in the COVID world, these outdoor amphitheaters are pretty good. You know, you can socially distance and have some free UV treatment. But you know, this is certainly a benefit to green infrastructure. You know, some of the items that they were looking at putting in at the site, they had a pretty significant drop coming off of parking lot down into their existing detention pond. The regenerative stormwater conveyance certainly provides a good way to step down the water. Especially this was kind of an eroded area, so it takes advantage of existing stream beds and topography to be able to fill that in with filter media. The rocks, you know, they chose to use riprap because it was much less expensive than just the large sandstone blocks and river stones that you might see in some, but you can still have basically the same components. And then you do have the sand filter underneath this that provides the water quality benefits as well as promoting infiltration. Of course, the bioretention area, this is, you saw on the poster a couple of slides back, the little amphitheater area. You can see it here as it looks out across the bioretention pond. One of the things that they also wanted was a walking path to kind of provide some connectivity around some of the green infrastructure that was going in and connecting that to the existing sidewalks. So they went in with a recycled rubber mulch pathway that's also permeable. So runoff that goes on to this, you know, could pass on through and be infiltrated into the ground. But it creates a nice little outdoor classroom. They planted some trees in the background so that in the afternoon they'll have shade over this area. So it's, again, like I said at the beginning, it is kind of I mean, we have to just, when we're thinking about green infrastructure, low impact development, it is a state of mind. You know, as engineers, we're kind of trained to follow a flow path, and when we're designing things and go through the checklist. Well, in green infrastructure and low impact development, it's a similar type thing. As you think through these processes, you just have to expand your palette a little bit and think about plants and sunshine and all these other things that go into it. But it can create a really nice feature that provides that dual impact of water quality, but quality of life as well. This photograph is interesting. We talked about not showing it, but on the other hand, it is a valuable lesson learned. So, you know, this is an enhanced swell. You can see the parking lot to the left. There was an existing tree island that you can see the oak tree coming up out of. Basically, we designed the enhanced swell, and instead of having the catch basins, there were a couple of, or I guess 3 single wing catch basins up through the parking lot. Those were basically capped, and then flumes were put in to carry the water off of the parking lot into the enhanced swell. And during construction, one of the concerns was the potential for erosion before the selected vegetation took over. And the contractor put some nice ryegrass out there and didn't really do anything to maintain it. And so it got several feet tall, and as it died, kind of covered up all the plants that we were hoping to keep. So that created a little bit of a maintenance issue. Don will talk about a little bit more of maintenance in just a minute, but you know, this is a very nice feature because you've got, especially in the summertime, you get a nice thunderstorm, the pavement's 100 and something degrees, that water washes across there, and instead of it going down into the stream, now it goes into this this nice vegetated swell. It's got a chance to infiltrate through the bottom filter. And, you know, instead of getting a large slug of very hot water, now, you know, you're absorbing most of that and, you know, protecting the fish and wildlife downstream. And Don, I'll turn it over to you.
You want to do another poll question, Charlene?
Yeah, let's do our next poll question.
We always want to know what people are thinking and what people are
Trying to
doing.
remember how, oh, okay. Trying to remember how to get the next one. It's been a while. Okay, sorry about that. Here we go.
Has your MS4 already implemented some green infrastructure projects? No, but we want to, yes, or it is not a current priority. We need some background music. I'm going to put yes myself, even though I don't belong to MS4 anymore. Dun, 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 dun. Time's up. There we are. 63%, yes. Wow, that's great. And it's not a current priority. Okay, we'll see. The new regulations is going to come out hopefully in our lifetime, and we'll see if how that changes things, because that will be a #1 choice for post-construction. So
I mean, I think it's promising, you know, what we've seen in the first 2 polls is that there already is, you know, support for green infrastructure among staff, and that it's, you know, beginning to be implemented. So
it's a large learning curve.
Yeah, that makes your maintenance talk even more important, because you know that they're out there. You got to show us how to keep them maintained well.
I know. Of course, if you know me, you know I'm always talking maintenance. Before you even start designing, you should think, how is it going to be maintained? Because that is a very large feature of the features you put in, so to speak, is how you're going to maintain them. So next slide. Slide. Okay. Maintenance costs depend on the maintenance requirements. Of course, this is a picture in Chattanooga I took of our staff, and the lady in the middle, so looking down, that's Lynn Rutherford. She is I keep saying our, she's Josh's landscape maintenance guru. And if anybody needs some information about maintaining green infrastructure or plants in general, maybe vegetation, I'll call up Lynn Rutherford at the city of Chattanooga. And like I say, before you put them in, make sure that whoever's designing them, and I always like to say the designer, the PE that's designing them is not a landscape professional. And even a landscape architect may not be thinking about design, may not be thinking about maintenance. So you need someone thinking about maintenance. You need a PE that's going to look at a landscape architect that's going to look at the whole picture. And you need to look at somebody that's got plants in mind, how they're going to maintain the plants, maintain the media. And that needs to be very, very basis of your green infrastructure. And a lot of times you look at the diversity of vegetation, and some people like to put in, a whole palette of plants, 10, 15, but then, do you need that many? Are you going to maintain that many? And 5 years later, are there still going to be 5 or 15 types of plants? If you put in 15 different sedums and you only come back with 4 the next year, is that still functioning? These are things that we tussled with when I was with Chattanooga. If it's still functioning and you only have 2 plants left, 2 species of plants, is it still acceptable? It's up to you. These 4 people that you see out here maintaining this, along with Lynn, are people that we just hired to do any kind of work around landscape, and we were teaching them in the process of how to maintain native vegetation, what a native plant looks like. So we just threw them in and said, hey, this is what we want to do. We have all kinds of invasives in here, in this bioretention area that we want to take out. So these are things you have to decide. Are you going to use your in-house staff? Do you have somebody expert in-house? Or are you going to hire a landscape company that may know how to maintain them? You may have to direct them. You may have to say, this is what we have. This is how it was designed. Green jobs, we're talking about green jobs. Maybe developing landscape companies that know green infrastructure, that know native vegetation, that did not in the past. They may hire somebody. So it all works together with maintenance, with how you design. And next slide. This is a great card that we developed for Gwinnett to include these with your palette, include them with the design. So you can go out on the site and you can pull this up on your iPad or pull it up on a laminated card, and you can see the plants. You can say, okay, these are the 2, 4, 6 that's supposed to be out there. The rest of them are maybe invasives. So these are the ones we want to keep. Here's the design of it. Here's how it's put in. So this is a really good document that you can put in your manual, or you can put in iPads, or take out a laminated card with you, to look at the sites for maintenance. And this is something, before I left Chattanooga, we were working on developing for green infrastructure, a whole palette of plants, because plants are the key to green infrastructure, in my opinion, for especially biofiltration and green roofs, and because mulch is there, but mulch doesn't really do much of anything, in my opinion. So you want the plants, and you want the native vegetation, and because of all the different things that the native vegetation will do for you. And so this is a very good opportunity to have something like this. Next slide. operation and maintenance plan. Well, if you are MS4, you know you are required to do operation and maintenance plan for all your facilities. So to do an operation and maintenance plan for green infrastructure is very important. And are you going to have staff to do it? And these green infrastructure sites are not just a detention pond that you'll have over the back 40 that you don't want anybody to see. These are practices that you bring people to see. We've had no telling how many people from all over the country that come and see the Anderson Avenue retrofit project that we put out. It's very good education site for water quality, not just green infrastructure, or to coordinate with conferences. And we've had people from Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina and everywhere to come and see the Anderson Avenue retrofit project. If you're ever in there, go see Josh Rogers and he'll take you and show you all about it. And yeah, thank you. See this guy on the right? Do not do that. This is actually Anderson Avenue, and the design of this could have been a little bit different, but he should not be trying to mow that. But we designed it with long grass that's wanting to infiltrate into the bottom where the native vegetation is, and we designed it too steep to actually mow. So you learn from your mistakes, and this was a sort of mistake. So this needs to be. We were thinking about retrofitting this before I left. How do you plan to maintain steep slopes? Good question. And the design for what you maintain. So make sure that when you are designing these, do not do as we do, but do as we say. Select the plants. So you could put grass on the side of these slopes, but make sure they're easy to maintain. Make sure you have a definition so that how grass does. It grows where it wants to. You can take over the place. Next slide. This is Alan Sparkman from the Tennessee Concrete Association. This is a parking lot in Chattanooga that has a pervious pavement that's been there for pervious concrete. It's been there for years and never maintained. And we did a test. Josh is the big pusher on this. We did a test of the infiltration for this parking lot at the football field, and it just did not infiltrate at all. It just stood, the water just stood there. So Alan brought his machinery out there, and we did a workshop, and it took him a long time, and all he did was clean one stall, and it brought back the infiltration of this pervious concrete. Not 100%, but it close. So it's a remedial effort he made. It took a long time. If you had to do it for the whole parking lot, it'd be very expensive. So it's best to keep it maintained, best to keep it swept, keep all your, maintain it. Stitching time saves 9. We couldn't afford to do this one, the whole parking lot, but it can be done, and restored the functionality to the parking areas that he did his little work. It took him a long time, but make sure that you maintain it, so you won't have to spend a lot of money to bring it back to remedial. So not just pervious pavement, but all your practices, especially vegetation, because you start getting all this in native vegetation, you start taking over with what am I trying to say? Invasives. It's hard to get it out. It's hard to, so keep it maintained. Next slide.
Don, real quick too, I mean, when you look at it, it looks like the source is just coming off that island. So when they're out there, the maintenance crews are doing maintenance. If they see an issue, got to ask the question, where is it coming from, and try and put an end to that as well.
And that's big on design too. This is probably not a great place to put this, or maybe sure you have the grass growing there that's not going to allow all the sediment to come off onto it.
Right. Right, I guess that comes back to me.
Comes back to you, David.
We will talk about flooding resilience, and that'll pretty well wrap up our talk here. You know, when you think about green infrastructure, we are trying to mimic nature. We're trying to infiltrate runoff. We're trying to limit just impervious or impervious area and create pervious area. So all those go hand in hand in reducing flooding by reducing the amount of runoff from a site. Some of the things that become really important are the master planning and watershed planning. You know, when we look at a city or a county area and break it out into different drainage areas, you know, we study those drainage areas, and it can help us better understand what's going on, and then look at, you know, what the impacts are to our downstream channels and things. I think one of the things that, especially as regulations change, redevelopment becomes, in my opinion, a very key element into restoring communities, into restoring drainage areas, because you know, if you're 90% developed, you're not going to solve anything just beating up the last 10% of the developers, you know. But if you can go back and over time correct the errors of the previous 90%, you can start making some significant differences. But that's all part of that planning and looking at you know, watersheds and total, and then picking out where can we make some improvements that will really have ultimate benefits. One of the types of projects was the Marsh Creek project. And when you look at the photograph on the right, you can see in the cyan colored or purple colored outline is a drainage area that's very heavily impervious. It's an old shopping center area, a lot of old downtown areas, as well as a few homes as you go down towards the little yellow outline of the proposed SCM. But you know, that's a lot of impervious area that developed over probably 70, 80 years of time. And you know, so that's a lot of harm to go back and try to correct. But one of the things that when they did their watershed study, this popped up is, hey, if you know, if you can put an SCM here, you can have a pretty major impact on an impaired stream downstream. Also, it just so happened that the city was a new city and they were looking to build a city center, so they would have an identity. And they, because it was going to be redevelopment, we're going to have to do some type of stormwater control as it was. And so they were able to combine this and get that dual aspect of, you know, not only providing controls for a large area and improving an impaired stream, but you're also providing something that was going to be required anyway to be able to develop that city center. And then as a bonus, they got a little over $400,000 in a 319H grant, which really helped the project. You know, in this project, not only this one, but other types of projects that you're going to be looking at with green infrastructure, again, is just thinking about not only how the element is going to perform what you're trying to do, but also what are some of the benefits that you can get out of it? You know, what are some of those win-win type of situations that you can have? For this project, you know, they had to do stormwater detention with water quality components. And a lot of that was driven in the grant application, that they had a downstream that used to be, I'm sure, a very nice mountain looking stream, and now it was a huge, deep U-shaped channel with banks 8 to 10 feet high, and just an eroded mess down through there. So controlling stormwater is really important. The project was really broken out into several components. The initial part was a large bioretention area, which took water from pretty much the entire 30-acre drainage area. And then that would filter through and wind up into the permanent pool, which also provided some water quality benefits. And then the entire site could be filled. It was surrounded by a block wall. So the entire facility could be filled up in a 100-year storm event and pretty well cut off water going down this channel. Everything pretty much that went into this went out through, I think it was a 6-inch PVC pipe. So that's a tremendous difference for the downstream. But not only that, because this was going to be so close to the city center, it's a very vibrant area. They wanted to create this as a park and provide some walking trails, education, and other things. When you're out on Johnson's Ferry Road, it's very loud, very noisy, a lot of cars and vehicles going by. The second you go down the handicap ramp or the stairs into this facility, it all of a sudden becomes very nice and peaceful, and you have the fountain and you see people walking, and they're like, they really enjoy the facility. The downside is maybe once every 10 years, you have a major flood, the sidewalks, maybe get inundated and somebody has to go out there and hose it off. But, for 10 years worth of work, that's not too bad, to have to go out there just every so often and clean it up. And here's just a picture of the site. And you can see just, it's a very, very peaceful place. The fountain provides turnover in the water. It's not just a nice aesthetic thing, but again, that's one of the elements that go in to help turn the water over, keep it oxygenated. We talk about nature sometimes, and Don had mentioned the number of plants. Sometimes you plant, you go in and you plant your pallet of plants that are selected for the site. And, nature has its own ideas, and, a lot of cattails and other things popped up out here out of nowhere. It's like, where did they come from? The lake filled up with fish. I mean, there is no stream upstream of this, it was dry, and, now there's fish all over that. It's probably the mayor's fault because he wanted to be able to go fishing at lunchtime. But, these things create, really nice quality of life components. So that's that dual benefit. And, even this is more than a dual benefit, because you're getting the water, the flood control, you're getting water quality, but you're also providing a very nice park setting for people to get out, especially at lunchtime, leave City Hall, come down here, have your lunch. And it's a really nice facility. It's not a good picture. On the right, there's the bioretention, and it's got a little platform up there. You can sit and look at it, but overall, nice feature. And then some of the things that they put in, of course, were benches. You see the educational component. They've got signage around the facility to explain about water quality and what's the purpose of this park, what's it trying to do. They've also got a number of picnic tables around to create a park setting to allow people to have picnics out here and gatherings. There's a lot of nice lawn space around it. So it does create a nice quality of life project out of a stormwater project. Here's the bioretention area that was off to the people's right a few minutes ago. Plants, this was several years ago. The plants now are, you know, a good bit larger. The rocks on the left that created the channel were actually from the site itself. So they were able to, instead of import rocks, they were able to use some of the components from the site and make it look a lot more natural. It's kind of neat when you're out there and it's rained to see the water flowing under the little bridge and watch it going into the lake. It's a really nice setting. I will say the picture of the building on the right, those folks, there was some land trading that took place to be able to put this in. And they were very good to work with. You know, they were a little bit apprehensive about the project, and once the project was completed, they were thrilled because this is basically the picture they're going to put in their sales brochure to sell the building when the time comes. We talked about increased property values. They used to have kind of a real trashy wooded area filled with lots of plastic bottles and trash, and now they have a very beautiful feature in their back door that becomes an asset. So definitely help their property values. And with that, I don't know if we have one more quick poll question. We can do that, and then if there are any questions or comments.
Just launched the poll. Okay. Make sure everybody saw that.
On the edge of my seat for this one.
Was it that David Letterman said we polled the audience, and we all know how painful that can be? Sorry.
And it is multiple choice because there are several that are pretty hard to choose from.
Yeah, I was giving it just a few more seconds than the last one to make sure everybody could get their answers in. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end it if everybody's done. Okay, we got another one, so I'm going to wait a few more seconds. Okay. See him, Amy?
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. Top ones: funding, political support, maintenance.
Maintenance.
I like the nothing is holding us back.
I like that one.
I want to know who that is.
One person.
Going forward
Right.
with this.
Well, very good.
Very good. Thank everybody for jumping in and listening to this.
Yeah, thank you all.
Absolutely. I got a few just follow-up things real quick. I'm going to share my screen. Just a couple of updates, and then we'll be good to go. Just make sure that I know that you attended. I do have all of your names up here, so if you do not receive an email soon, you will know that I did not have you as attending. I tried to go, I went through and made sure and kept checking, make sure everybody was on here. So I just want to make sure you know. A few updates from TNSA. Thank you all so much for the TNSA talk today. Thank you, Don and Amy and David. It was very, very good. Do you guys have anything follow-up to send out to folks when I send the certificate? I'm also recording this. So it'll take me probably until tomorrow to get it on my computer and it to convert, and then to convert it again for the website. But I have everything that I've recorded so far on our website.
Charlene, is it possible, like, are the survey results saved by any chance? Is it possible?
I believe I have a file. If I do, I'll send those to you.
Okay. Or if you can just.
I'm learning more every time we do it. So if I do that, I'll email it to you.
Well, I'm curious if you could just send it out to everybody
Oh, okay.
Like not like
Yeah,
just
I'll see.
me, but like
So every time I have a Zoom, it creates a file on my computer. So let me look in those and see if it's on there.
okay, yeah, I'm just
Okay.
curious
If
because
so,
other
I'll
people
attach
might
it
like it.
and send it out to everybody with their certificates. All right, because I got those ready to go. Okay. Anyway, I just want to tell you just a few things. We have a virtual race for TNSA. It's starting next week. It's only $10, and it's basically just to say that you're doing something fun for TNSA. Right now, we have Goodlettsville and Hamilton County as our sponsors, and all that enter will have a chance to win a rain barrel that is shipped to their door. And it's basically walk or run a 5K and just show us your waterway in your area. I'm hoping we get a lot of people throughout the state to share that on social media, just so we can see everybody's faces and see what's going on with everybody and see where they walk or run. Because I have water that I walk in. I don't run, but I
You
walk
walk
next
in
to
the
my
water?
house. A nice little stream next to my house. Okay, here is our upcoming TNSA talks. So you can currently register for the one with Vina Jones about the CRF funds. I'm actually having a talk with her right after this to go over everything to make sure we have her squared away for her talk, but she's really excited about that. Then John Hathaway will be talking on the 24th about research update from UT. So that's really exciting. He hasn't done a TNSA talk or anything with us, I guess, since conference. So we're excited about that. If you are interested in hosting a TNSA talk, or if you have a topic that you would like related to a TNSA talk, please let me know. We can find someone to host that. I'm working on getting some scheduled for October. We won't have as many as, and we will not have as many in October, just because I know I have fall break, and then we also have conference. So we'll have hopefully 2 to 3, but not one every week that we normally have. And then the last thing I have to share, is about conference. So conference is virtual, and it's a live virtual conference. We've hired someone to help us facilitate the technical support for the sessions, and we're having an exhibitor hall. I will be sending things out, trying to get folks nominated for TNSA awards and voting on that. We will have a membership meeting, and we will have door prizes. We're gonna have some $50 gift card door prizes. So registration is open for conference, and these are our sponsors: CEC, WK Dickson, Stantec, and FMA. So if you guys have any questions about conference, let me know, but everything is on the website at tnstormwater.org/TNSA conference. And that's all I have to share at the moment. So, okay, I don't think we have any other comments, or anybody have any other questions or anything before we get going?
Chris, don't you have something to say? You always have something to say.
Not today.
Not today.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. I'll get your
Thank
certificates
you.
out. I'll check on those poll questions. And thank you all three for hosting this today. It has been fabulous, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And those in Northeast, we have a regional meeting tomorrow. So try to attend if you can. I'll talk to you later. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
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 Thanks, everybody.